you're dead.
Dead is just a word.
El 17 de octubre.
It's the grabber.
She came to me in my dream.
De la película que no dejará audiencias dormir.
What do you think happens when you die in a dream? It's time to find out.
Ethan Hawke.
I'm not afraid of you.
You should be.
Black Phone 2. Cines el 17 de octubre. Clasificada R. Menores de 17 años no permitidos sin un padre.
He heard something heavy approaching through the church near the altar. He was halfway through. Whatever it was, it seemed to have come out of the sacristy. From the locked sacristy. He was sure he was alone, that no one else had entered there. He started whistling nervously like a cartoon character, pretending nothing was happening and concentrating on the piece of ceiling he was repairing. Whatever was dragging itself was getting closer. Good evening, community of Tales of the Night. It is an enormous pleasure to be able to welcome you again in this dark corner illuminated by a few candles. Find a place to sit and please, make yourselves comfortable. Comfortable because we are about to delve into one of the real horror stories that the community has experienced. I hope with all my heart that you are in the best mood to get scared. And if not, I remind you that this is an opportunity for you to forget about any pending matters, at least for the next few minutes, because none of that fits here. I ask you to concentrate on how the following story makes you feel, to build each scene in your head, and let yourself go, but not completely. There's always the possibility that this time you're listening to us as simple entertainment, but next time, you'll be the protagonist of Tales of the Night. And well, community, today it's finally my turn to tell my story. I think it's something common in the community to have a story we want to share, but that turns out to be complicated to write, to remember, to relive every detail, especially when they are stories that marked us, when they represent the most terrifying moments of our lives, when we came face to face with the world of the supernatural. My story begins in the small city where I was born. Those who are from outside still call it a town, but it's already a city, although it still retains the charm of a small place. That strong sense of community that we are all part of something. I have lived there intermittently all my life, since I have been old enough to move around and find ways to work throughout the country. I was far away when I received terrible news. My sister-in-law, my niece, had died in a tragic accident. My poor brother had been left alone with his youngest son. A baby? Barely. As soon as the neighbors told me, I prepared everything and returned home. I returned because I knew it was time to go back, at least for a while. It's good that I did because poor Jorge, poor brother of mine, was falling to pieces. With good reason. His wife's only family was her grandmother, and she tried to help him take care of the baby for a while each day while he worked. But she couldn't stay with him all day anymore, already so old and so tired. And my brother couldn't manage his small repair business without his wife, who was the one who handled all the finances, all the administrative work. He asked me for help. He asked me to stay with him for a while, help him carry the work for a few months, for a year or two, if I was up for it. He invited me to be his partner. I finally accepted. And it's that my brother looked so fragile, so vulnerable. Every time I hugged him, I swear to you, I felt like the poor man was going to break into 1,000 little pieces. And I hid all the sadness that seeing him like that provoked in me. But above all, I had to hide the sadness of never seeing my sister-in-law again, of not having been able to really get to know my niece. What saved Jorge's life was taking refuge in God. We were raised Catholic, but I moved away from religion in adolescence. I simply stopped believing. He was still a Catholic, but an occasional one, going when there was an important mass, or stopping by on Ash Wednesday, nothing more. However, when he lost his family, God, religion, the community that embraced him in that moment and didn't let him fall, they were his salvation. I don't want to leave this as a lesson. I want to make it clear. I don't want it to seem like I'm telling you to take refuge there in your most difficult moment, when you think there's no other way out. I'm just sharing my brother's experience, his decisions, perhaps very different from the ones I would have made. He told me to accompany him, to go with him. But it wasn't my way of imagining a free afternoon after a day of being in such physical work as what we had there, and I only agreed to go to church. Until one day he told me he needed my help. And no way, I had to go for my brother who did everything. And so I returned to that church, to one that was very different from the one I visited as a child. It was a Tuesday afternoon mass. I remember he was already waiting for me, and the street leading to the church seemed very peaceful, quiet, full of peace, completely solitary, forgotten. Perhaps the warm light coming from the church called to me like a dazzled bug. As I approached the courtyard, I understood a bit of the tranquility it transmitted to my brother Jorge. You could feel it. You could breathe it. When I entered, the few attendees at the mass fell silent. Everyone turned to look at me. They called me to come closer. Soon I understood that the mass had already ended, and what they were now carrying out was a kind of meeting. The church was very damaged by the storms that had hit the city. It was already leaking everywhere. They had made a fundraising collection to be able to repair it, but they were still short. My brother told them that he could do it for that price, that he wasn't going to charge for the labor and could help with some material, but that he definitely couldn't do it alone. A couple of people from the community were already working with my brother's help on the outside part, perhaps the most difficult, but the repair and scanning of the beams, the interior that they didn't master. That, yes, he was going to need me. He told them they had to ask me directly, that he had already asked me for too much, and that he couldn't also ask me to accept donating my work. The priest was very kind. He promised me that they were going to pay me the rest, that he hoped to gather a bit more in the coming weeks, but that it was essential to repair it now, to start practically that same night. We had only a few days before another storm hit us that was already in the air. For that very reason, we couldn't delay the other work we did during the day, and because of the urgency, we would have to work during the night. They would be days practically without sleep, but it was important that the church could return to being a refuge. Many people were going to need it. They always did. And how could I say no to that? I told them not to worry about the rest, that I would also donate my work. And it's that perhaps in that moment I wasn't seeing the church as a religious institution, but as a shelter, a place where many people were going to take refuge in those days, both physically and spiritually. We went to get what was necessary. Jorge went to his house to tell his wife's grandmother that he would have to stay working, but that later a lady from the church would come to help her. I returned alone to the place. There I knew that something would be different. The tranquility of the street upon arriving had now turned into desolation. The few houses on the street seemed abandoned. The clouds weren't storm clouds yet, but they darkened all the light coming out of the church door. It illuminated a figure in front of it. It looked macabre, like a figure from a horror story image. I brought the truck closer slowly, as if something was telling me not to continue forward. I remembered a warning from my father that after what I'm going to tell you, you'll understand I should have followed. Never enter a church at night. I recognized the figure upon arriving. It was the father dressed in civilian clothes. He looked calm, He was waiting outside the empty church. "Thank you for coming, Joel. Before you start working, please allow me to offer you something for dinner. It's not good to work on an empty stomach. We don't have much, but at least not to go hungry. We'll find something," he told me. I thanked him and accepted. The father gave me a good feeling. Something very different in the church. Half light behind him. I didn't understand why. We walked to a kind of small event hall on the side. The ravages of the rains were also noticeable there. He noticed that I was looking at the ceiling and told me that they would leave that for later, that what was urgent was the church. He served me dinner and told me something that in that moment I already found strange. He said, "I'm going to be nearby for anything. I live over there in a little house less than 100 meters from here. Sometimes, on dark nights like this, it's going to seem like there's nothing over there, that you're abandoned in a sea of darkness. But there's the little house in that direction. I repeat, please, anything. Don't hesitate to let me know." That is, I understood the kindness, but what was he referring to? What could happen to us there working on repairs inside the church? In any case, I appreciated the father's other plate of served food. Before saying goodbye, I noticed he was killing time, that he was waiting for my brother to arrive so as not to leave me alone. But I told him not to worry, that I could start myself, that I had already done many repairs of that type, right? "Okay, son. In any case, I'll stay here for a bit cleaning up." He started to organize some things in the hall, and I went out to head to the church. I got to work. I also didn't want to pressure my brother if he hadn't arrived yet. But for some reason, the baby arrived a while later, but without equipment. He had taken for granted that I would bring his, so he went back to our office, which wasn't very far from there. In any case, I had seen him on one of those bad days where sadness weighed more than tiredness. That was part of my job, or at least I had adopted it that way. I was going to work double when necessary and cover for my brother when I saw him so discouraged. But it was strange. That day I had seen him very enthusiastic about helping the church, and suddenly he turned off as soon as he entered and saw me. I was alone at the entrance of the church on the ladder, when I noticed out of the corner of my eye that the father passed by the altar. I heard how he opened a door on the left side. It led to a kind of small office where apparently they kept things for the ceremony. I kept working. After a moment, I managed to see someone else. What happened? I couldn't turn in time, but it seemed to me like a lady with a shawl, all covered with her hands on her chest, who passed as if hunched over, as if bent to also enter the office. I heard them talking, and I was surprised that they were still in the church so late. But then I thought that maybe they wanted to be present while we worked. So I simply continued with my work. There would be no way to finish on time if I didn't work every moment I was there covering my brother's low spirits. So it hit 11:30 at night and I heard my brother arrive. I quickly went down the ladder to help him, but first I decided to go talk to the father, let him know that my brother had already arrived, that he should go rest. Here. The door was ajar, but I didn't dare to go in. I only spoke from outside. "Father, excuse me. May I come in?" He kept talking. It seemed like they hadn't heard me. I got closer, positioning myself at the edge of the door, about to push it. "Father already." They fell silent as soon as I knocked. I apologized. Maybe we're talking about something important. I called again. Suddenly I felt everything very cold. I don't know if the temperature changed suddenly or if it was the effect of fear on my body. But maybe that's why I dared to open the door, to peek in. There was no one. Nothing. The office was very small, like 3 by 2 meters. And of course there was nowhere they could have left from. It didn't even have windows. There was a small closet. But for some reason, I had the sensation that they had gotten in there, that someone was hiding inside. But this didn't make sense. You could see it wasn't more than 15 centimeters deep, but something made me want to go open it. Something told me to open it. I left. I walked quickly across the church to the door. In that moment, I felt it stronger. I mean, I don't know if I can say it like that, but I felt everything stronger. Each step, I felt my feet travel through my legs to my head. I felt the cold on my back, as if something had. You make the altar. I felt the smell of humidity and old flowers that I had noticed since I arrived. But now it was piercing my nose. I left the church, and in the distance, my brother's truck approaching down that dark street. The father was right. The street became too sinister. Too much. I don't know how my brother saw me, but he asked me if I had fallen, if I was okay. I only asked him if he hadn't already arrived. I told him I was sure I had heard him arrive 5 minutes earlier. I knew perfectly well how the truck sounds, how the engine vibrates, how loud the muffler is. I could even see the light from the headlights illuminate under the church door. He told me no, that it was surely my imagination, that I was getting nervous. I didn't understand why. But when he headed to the church before entering, he stopped. He pressed, turned, and made a sign to me like shivers, as if he was afraid to enter that. His church. The only place that had given him calm in recent months. We worked normally for the rest of the night before going to rest a bit before 3. When we were leaving, I saw that at his house the father turned on the light. He made a sign to say goodbye to us, as if he had been waiting for us to leave. With distrust. And in that moment I thought it was distrust towards us. But I think I was wrong. He wanted to see that we would be okay. The next day, as you can imagine, I arrived to work on something all day in the day jobs I was afraid that night would come. Afraid to go back there. I know that for many people it can be something almost unimportant. Of course there are people who have seen worse things, but I had never experienced anything. The remotely closest to being paranormal. That's why what I experienced terrified me. It made me feel that everything could be possible. That even the most terrifying things that our parents told us about the house where we grew up, things I found out about in adolescence and always made fun of because my parents were very credulous, very suggestible, very easy to fool. That whole night, while I was working, I kept hearing a conversation again. Voices that seemed to come from the office, but there was no one. The door was open and I could see there was no one. At one point I went to the bathroom, to the event hall next door, where the father was not having dinner, and when I returned I found the father somewhat nervous, talking to my brother. As soon as he saw me, he approached me. He asked me if I had opened the door next to the altar. I told him no, that I had found it open, like the day before he took us. Then he showed us the double lock it had. I always leave it locked. There is nothing more important to me than leaving it well locked here. I ask you please that under no circumstances are you going to enter, and if it opens again, whatever time it is, let me know please. God willing, we can finish as soon as possible. That night I was feeling very uncomfortable. I couldn't stop turning towards the door next to the altar, thinking it was going to open at any moment. Something from inside was going to come out. I noticed that my brother was praying in a low voice, but I didn't want to do it. It seemed hypocritical to go around saying I didn't believe in anything. But there, with that fear, now yes, to start praying. It's very complicated for me to describe to you what I felt when I turned to see the figures that were on the sides of the church. When turning to see Christ on the cross, having the impression that they were watching me, that they were moving slightly every time I returned a look to them. I swear to you that it seemed like they were moving a little, enough for me to notice. I never would have imagined that the first time in my life I felt true terror would be surrounded by religious images. It would be in the house of God. Recently, listening precisely to Tales of the Night, I don't remember if it was Uriel or the person who sent the story, but they were talking about how all the good, all the positive energy, faith in God, filled the church during the day, and they wondered if in counterpart at night, it couldn't then be flooded with exactly the opposite. When I heard it was when I dared to finally finish this story. Tonight I can't concentrate. I felt dizzy. I was about to fall. You can imagine that in this business one cannot fear heights or have vertigo. But in that moment I looked down and almost felt like something was pulling me. I felt like the ladder was vibrating as if someone was moving it slightly from below. I felt very dizzy. I told my brother I wouldn't be long, that I had to get some air. He turned to look at me, scared with his gaze. He told me not to leave him alone, but the truth is, if I stayed there one more moment, I was about to have an accident. My brother was left alone for a moment. I went out. Not even 5 minutes passed when the church door opened. I was sitting in my truck smoking, but I got out immediately to see what was happening. My brother was completely white as a sheet of paper, his eyes wide open, full of terror. The terror that I have only seen in slaughterhouses when pigs realize they are about to die. I had never seen that fear in the look of a person. We got in the truck. After getting some air, he told me he was on the ladder, working on the ceiling after I left, when he heard something heavy dragging through the church near the altar. He was right in the middle. Whatever it was, it seemed to have come out of the office with the locked door. He was sure it wasn't me and no one else had entered there. He started whistling nervously like a cartoon character, pretending nothing was happening and concentrating on the piece of ceiling he was working on. Whatever was dragging itself was getting closer. To him without turning to see, but moving his head barely a few degrees towards the altar. He tried to see out of the corner of his eye with the last edge of his field of vision what was approaching. When he was telling me, he paused, a long pause, and told me that what he thought he saw was as if someone naked was approaching, dragging across. He told me he could swear it. I know he was going to tell me he could swear it on them, but I interrupted him. I told him not to bring them into it, to leave them very far from there at the moment. Do you remember those uncontrollable urges I had to check, to open the closet? That first time, well, I felt them again. I wanted to go back to the church, open the door. I wanted to confirm that Christ was still on the cross, there on the altar. Or well, once and for all, discover that he wasn't, and that something horrible was happening there. Something demonic that was playing with the most valuable thing we had. With my brother's faith, with his very life. We went to the Father. We told him that we had felt afraid, without explaining anything more. And he understood. He accompanied us to the church to take our things, and said that for that night we had worked enough. We took what we could. The next day there would be no masses, so we could leave everything as such. When we got in the truck, the Father approached us to tell us one last thing. Look, to finish, tomorrow I'm going to get one way or another, someone to come help you. It seemed like he was saying it sincerely, but not because he wanted to make the work easier for us. I knew he was afraid that we were alone there, of what we were going to see, of how it was affecting us. The next night we had help from Don Epigmenio and his grandson Rodrigo. Don Epigmenio was an atheist, but married to one of those very Catholic ladies. Rodrigo was a teenager, but a great worker. He understood so quickly and worked so efficiently that as a joke, my brother told me we had to convince him to go to the trade with us. We worked, according to me, now more calmly, with a lot of fear, but calm, without experiencing anything as terrible as the previous nights. Or so I thought again. That place never stopped surprising me. We reached the end of the work. Just the night of the storm that had advanced a whole day seemed like a coincidence. When we were putting things away, we were startled by the roar of lightning that hadn't fallen far from there. We were very happy. We had made it. We put things away hastily, provisionally in the event hall next door. Don Epigmenio told us that seeing that it was barely 1, and we had been working until much later, we should have a whiskey at his house which was very close to there. I don't know why, but something in his eyes told me he needed the company. And then I said yes. My brother also accepted so as not to leave me alone. When we arrived, we were surprised that it was a large house, where it looked humble, and from how he worked, it seemed he had been a laborer all his life. But his house had a huge patio with a beautiful wooden porch, where we settled into some chairs, while his grandson went in for the whiskey he had ordered. I'm going to tell you something he said. I don't even know where to start. But if I didn't go to church anyway, now there's no human power that will make me go back. He told us. My brother and I leaned in imagining what kind of experience he was going to tell us about today. That shortly before you, the church was alone. The father was in the hall preparing dinner. God knows what. But I entered the church like it was nothing. Well, without warning, I was around the altar, when I swear to you I saw a lady all covered up, like with bandages, very tight, with her little hands on her chest. What happened? Running from one side to another, and she went into the confessional, and I shouted at her to fall, all Father, but I only saw how the door closed. I approached worried because she looked bad, because she walked strangely. I don't know if like injured or hurt, but strange. The Lord is with you. Blessed are you. I approached slowly. I told her she couldn't be there, but she didn't answer me. I asked her if she was okay, if she needed anything. She opened the door because she had gotten in there where the Father goes, and there was no one. God's truth, there was no one. You don't know the fear it gave me. I checked the whole floor, the walls, the ceiling, everything solid. All very solid wood. I got in myself too, and I still don't understand why, but something made me get in and close the door. Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy kingdom. But I heard as if someone was praying on the other side of the wall, where people confess. You can't see well and it was dark, but it makes my eye the great to see who was there. Seen a little closer. Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come. We are seeing. A voice talked to me to the ear behind me. It asked what we were seeing after. You have seen how confessionals are. No one else fits. I ran like a madman. At the entrance, I found my boy and he helped me breathe. But I swear to you, I'm not going back. I've already fulfilled the vow. His grandson Rodrigo arrived to hear the end of the story. It was there that I found out that he had been an altar boy, that for a long time he had planned to be a priest until the previous year. And he, that young man, almost a child, was the one who gave us the only thing we can consider an explanation of what we experienced. It's because of everything the Father carries. Maybe you don't know, but He does many evictions. He helps people a lot to remove bad things that stick to them or that get into their houses. People come looking for him from far away because it's like he has that gift. I had to accompany him twice and I couldn't take it. And that's when I always waited outside, that I would never risk it. He wouldn't let me in at all. But according to what one of the ladies who always accompanies him told me, one who prays very loudly, when he removes things, they have to go somewhere. They have to stick to someone. She says that the Father brings them with him, and that he locks them all in the church so they don't do more harm to anyone. So they can't get out of there anymore. That's why, maybe they're in the sacristy, in the door, next to the altar, in the back. He has a closet with a double padlock, one he never opens, that not even those of us who help him can open. Who knows what it is? But I feel like something has to do with all this. I believed him. I believed everything Rodrigo said. But of course I didn't dare ask anything more, and noticed that I kept going to church. As a result of that, I started to believe. But I preferred another one, even if it's farther away, and over there I found my community. But I wonder if all churches, or at least some more, hide secrets as terrible as that one. If they have those things, those entities or ghosts or devils, locked in them, unable to leave to feed on people's pain, on fear. If they are there condemned to only manifest at night. I wonder how many fathers of those who do this, who have this power, decide to take evil with them, decide to carry the dead, and others decide to carry the dead of their neighbor.
Hello, Finney. You're dead. Dead is just a word.
El 17 de octubre.
It's the grabber.
She came to me in my dream.
De la película que no dejará audiencias dormir.
What do you think happens when you die in a dream? It's time to find out.
Ethan Hawke.
I'm not afraid of you.
You should be.
Black Phone 2. Cines el 17 de octubre. Clasificada R. Menores de 17 años no permitidos sin un padre.